for the International Atomic Energy Agency to have access and transparency over Iran's nuclear activities. That'll be the same IAEA that had access and transparency over Iran's nuclear activities under the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, before Donald Trump, in his first term in office, withdrew American participation from the Iranian nuclear deal and essentially eviscerated the agreement. It also calls on Iran to hand over its stockpile of enriched uranium. That'll be the same stockpile of enriched uranium that President Trump says doesn't exist because Operation Midnight Hammer destroyed it. And then there's what the president had to say in the Oval Office yesterday about the disposition of Iran in its current incarnation following 3.5 weeks of US and Israeli bombardment.
That is a huge accusation. Was this Oval Office meeting really a diplomatic disaster that unfolded in real time, or was it planned from the very beginning? Let's take a closer look at what actually happened.
Well, I think we've got to start with where on earth are things now going in Iran? Because as we discussed earlier in the week, James, President Trump appeared to step back from the brink, said that he wasn't going to be bombing Iran's energy and power facilities for 5 days while he gave talks that he claimed were taking place with Iranian officials time to bear fruit. The Iranians, of course, now on an hourly basis are mocking him. I mean, insisting that there are no negotiations occurring. They, of course, could be lying, but absolutely poking fun at him by saying that President Trump is negotiating with himself. And Iran's military spokesman today saying that there are no circumstances under which anyone from the Iranian regime is going to come to terms with President Trump. If you look at this 15-point peace plan, this sort of new cunning plan that the Americans believe that the Pakistanis have conveyed to the Iranians, and there's all sorts of stuff going on here because Pakistan really wants to project itself as the powerful mediator in these conversations. Have they really sent that peace plan to the Iranians? They say they have. If you look at the plan itself, in as much as it is being reported by pro-Netanyahu Channel 12 television of Israel, it appears to reveal President Trump's own mendacity. I mean, this is a plan that calls on the Iranians to hand over and agree to destroy their nuclear sites in Fordo, in Isfahan.
Hang on a minute.
All the nuclear sites.
Hang on a
yeah,
minute.
Exactly. Exactly. All the nuclear sites that President Trump to this day maintains were completely obliterated last year. It calls for the International Atomic Energy Agency to have access and transparency over Iran's nuclear activities. That'll be the same IAEA that had access and transparency over Iran's nuclear activities under the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, before Donald Trump, in his first term in office, withdrew American participation from the Iranian nuclear deal and essentially eviscerated the agreement. It also calls on Iran to hand over its stockpile of enriched uranium. That'll be the same stockpile of enriched uranium that President Trump says doesn't exist because Operation Midnight Hammer destroyed it. And then there's what the president had to say in the Oval Office yesterday about the disposition of Iran in its current incarnation following 3.5 weeks of US and Israeli bombardment. Let's take a listen.
They have no Air Force left. They have no anti-aircraft equipment left, no radar left, no leaders left. The leaders are all gone. Nobody knows who to talk to. But we're actually talking to the right people, and they want to make a deal so badly.
The leaders have all gone. Nobody knows who to talk to, but we're talking to the right people.
Yeah,
this
that's a relief.
Top person,
Phew.
Apparently the Iranian parliamentary spokesman,
Yeah.
speaker rather. But also when he says there, you know, that Iran's military has been destroyed and they've got no facilities at their disposal. This is the same Iran that only yesterday the president conceded had fired 100 missiles at the USS Abraham Lincoln, every one of which he says was intercepted by the United States and Israel, and so it posed no threat to the aircraft carrier. Now, either they've got no nuclear capacity, no ballistic missile capacity left, no military capacity left, and they're on their knees begging to make a deal, or they're still in a position where they can fire 100 missiles at an American aircraft carrier, and also 2 missiles that were sent in the direction of the U.S.-UK base in Diego Garcia over the weekend, one of which reached its target. So how you know what is true and what is not in this telling of events that tumbles from the White House is a daily challenge.
I mean, it's beyond that, and yet it also isn't it? It's like deja vu all over again. But I don't know. I can't quite remember him ever quite offering up the 2 contradictory positions in the space of a single sentence. As in, we don't know. There's nobody left to negotiate with. We don't know who we should be negotiating with, but we're definitely negotiating with the right person.
Yeah. I mean, it's extraordinary. And extraordinary also with the comments in the Oval Office yesterday of the man who is essentially, by the day, becoming the American version of Baghdad Bob. You remember Saddam Hussein's old spokesman. I mean, in this case, the self-styled Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth.
We have a president of the United States that when he sends his warfighters out to fight, he unties their hands to actually go out and close with and destroy the enemy as viciously as possible from moment one. And that's why we see ourselves as part of this negotiation as well. We negotiate with bombs.
We negotiate with bombs, except, of course, we're not negotiating with bombs when it comes to the energy and power facilities, because the president that he so slavishly serves has decided to put a 5-day pause in all of that in order to give these negotiations in whatever state they're taking place an opportunity to advance. I do think it's also important to underscore, James, that even while the president appears to be looking for an off-ramp, he is flooding thousands of additional troops to the region, including paratroopers. And it is perfectly possible that what we're witnessing here is not the Blackadder presidency, you know, where he stumbles from one cunning plan to another to find a way of bringing it to an end, and then they all blow up in his face and he just continues down the path that he was on previously. It is possible that what he's trying to do is simply delay things in order to get those additional military facilities to the region. And the idea that the 82nd Airborne is being sent in, I mean, these are paratroopers. These are people who jump out of aeroplanes and land on enemy terrain. It is boosting speculation here that he may be considering a limited, maybe not so limited, deployment of ground troops. And the difficulty about that is not only that it would be highly risky in terms of the military mission, whether the military mission is to control Kharg Island in the Strait of Hormuz and or try and find the enriched uranium that he claims was destroyed last summer. Also, it would be political kryptonite here because he has not prepared the American public in any way for the deployment of ground forces and the real possibility of a substantial uptick in American fatalities in this war zone. He never even prepared the American public for the war generally in the first place. But the idea that he's sending the 82nd Airborne in is either a psychological pressure point designed to force the Iranians to the table, or he's really got a plan to escalate.
Yeah, I mean,
a table that they're already at, that they were at in Geneva. Exactly, that they were at in Geneva.
So you can't rule anything out, up to and including the idea that he'll launch another US-led Middle Eastern war in direct contravention and ignorance of all the lessons that were learned last time a US president did that. Here's a couple of things. I mean, if we were betting men, the idea that they'll sign something that is very similar to but not quite as comprehensive as the JCPOA, and that Trump will just do a lap of honour claiming that he's done something incredible that Barack Hussein Obama, because he always says Hussein for racist reasons, as you know. Barack Hussein Obama's deal was rubbish, which is why I torched it, so now I've got one that's much better, and everyone will know it's not better, but no one will tell the emperor that he's not wearing any clothes. That's a realistic outcome. I would suggest possibly more realistic than him actually going, because unless you can get the mines out of the Strait of Hormuz, it doesn't really matter what happens on the Iranian mainland or on the island, the Karag Island. The question I'm frightened of asking you is whether there is now anybody in the room telling him the truth.
Oh, I don't think so.
Not
No.
one person.
I mean, with a singular... I think it's possible that Marco Rubio occasionally tells him the truth, and I think it's possible that J.D. Vance occasionally
He's
intercedes.
gone very quiet,
but
hasn't he?
not... Yeah, well, very, very quiet, because he's hoist on his own petard,
Yeah.
because in 2024 he said there were no circumstances under which a new Trump administration would invade Iran. It was for the regional allies to deal with. It was an ocean away. It doesn't matter to us. So he's got a problem there. I don't think there are no restraining influences on this presidency on this president in any meaningful way. I mean, when he twisted himself up yesterday into a pretzel by claiming that regime change has already taken place. I mean, that almost appeared to be him, again, preparing the ground to declare mission accomplished. A new Ayatollah in charge may not end up being the son of the old Ayatollah, could end up being the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament if the Iranians were to play ball with this negotiating process. I mean, it would give him some opportunity to claim that he'd won a victory, I suppose. But then what does he say to the Iranian people? I mean, to the people that he was telling in the early hours of March the 1st to rise up and prepare to take control of their own destiny. How does that work if he basically does what he's done in Venezuela, takes control of the oil and gas and keeps the regime in place while trying to condition its behaviour? Are the Iranian people going to be expected to go along with that? It's going to become incredibly difficult. The only advantage to him of that would be that he would be able, in some fashion, to withdraw and try and start focusing on the domestic issues that he urgently needs to focus on ahead of November.
Finally, the mail-in, the Florida voting scenario, which again defies analysis, really, but here we are trying.
Yeah, so there was an election yesterday in Palm Beach, literally in Mar-a-Lago's constituency in the Sunshine State of Florida, and it was for a vacant seat in the Florida State Legislature, not Congress, but the Florida State House. And there are two interesting aspects to this story. First, the most important aspect to this story is the Democrats won it. Yeah. A solidly Republican seat. They turned it over. And that is giving Democrats reason to dream that Florida might be back in play as a battleground state. But even more tantalizingly, Donald Trump, of course, is a registered voter in Florida out of Mar-a-Lago. So he had a vote in this election and he cast his ballot. But he didn't show up in person.
What?
He did it by postal vote.
But surely not.
Postal vote.
But that's the end of the world as we know it.
The end of the world, the soft underbelly of a completely compromised American electoral system is its reliance on continuing use of the postal vote. So he engaged in voting by post in this local election, even though, by the way, he was down there in Florida. He could have voted in person, did it by post. The White House says there's nothing to see here at all. Yeah. But, of course, there is gross hypocrisy to witness.
I have to just finish, Simon, because I know you're busy, with a comment from Trevor, who says, I doubt, this is in response to your comments about Marco Rubio, I doubt Rubio is telling Trump the truth. He couldn't even tell him his true shoe size.
Yes, those pictures are fantastic. Fantastic.
Whatever side you come down on, it's hard to deny that this was one of the most extraordinary diplomatic exchanges we've seen in years. Some will see it as tough negotiating, while others will see it as a public humiliation that could reshape international alliances. But that's the debate, and now it's over to you. Do you think this confrontation was planned from the start, or did it simply spiral out of control? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to subscribe for more.